The day started like any other sunny California morning. I eased my bright yellow Lamborghini Huracan out of the garage, the engine growling like a wild animal. I had saved years for that car. 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 Purple Hearts, and countless nights wondering if I'd ever make it home. My car was my peace. But peace wasn't something my HOA president, Karen Adams, believed in. The moment she saw my Lambo, her eyes narrowed like she had spotted a felony. She marched straight toward me yelling, "Your car violates neighborhood standards. It's too loud and too flashy." I laughed it off, not knowing that her obsession would soon turn into something far darker. I drove down the street, the sunlight glinting off the glossy yellow hood like a flare in a desert. Neighbors waved. Kids pointed. But Karen? She stood in the middle of the driveway, arms crossed, lips pressed so tight they looked stapled shut. Every time I glanced at the rearview mirror, she was still staring, like a villain origin story was unfolding behind me. Next morning, I planned to head out early for a veterans meetup. As I grabbed my keys, something felt off. The air was too still, too quiet. When I stepped outside, Karen was already waiting across the street, clutching her HOA clipboard like it was a weapon. I didn't even start the engine yet, and she shouted, "You can't park that thing in your own driveway overnight." I raised an eyebrow. "Karen, it's a residential driveway. My residential driveway. No exceptions," she snapped. "The color is disruptive. It attracts attention." "Karen," I said calmly, "it's a car, not a UFO." But she wouldn't back down. Her anger wasn't normal HOA anger. It was personal, almost obsessed. By noon, she was taking pictures of my license plate. By 1 p.m., she was measuring noise levels with some app on her phone. At 3 p.m., she was knocking on my door, demanding documentation of ownership. I had dealt with warlords in Afghanistan who were less intrusive. Around 6 p.m., when the sun dipped behind the palm trees, she escalated again. I was in the garage wiping down the Lambo when I heard rustling outside. Quick, sneaky footsteps. I peeked out. Karen was crouched near the front bumper with a flashlight, inspecting my car like she was searching for narcotics. "Can I help you?" I asked sharply. She jumped. "I'm checking for violations." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "Lady, I've seen IEDs on Afghan highways. The way you're circling my car, you're giving me flashbacks." But she didn't take the hint. Instead, she scribbled something on her clipboard and stormed off as if I had interrupted her property invasion. Next day, I installed cameras. Not because I was paranoid, because experience had taught me that when someone can't let go of a fixation, they eventually act on it. And I was right. Around 2 a.m., a loud thud jolted me awake. I rushed downstairs, heart pounding. The garage motion light flicked on. The camera alert pinged my phone. When I checked the footage, my jaw clenched at Karen in her nightgown, standing in my driveway with a baseball bat. She tapped the bat against the hood like she was debating something dangerous. After pacing for a while, she left. No damage. Not yet. But the message was clear. Obsession was turning into intent. The next morning, the neighborhood was buzzing. Karen had started a petition titled, "Remove the hazard Lamborghini from our community." Her claims were ridiculous. It lowers property values. It disturbs wildlife. It causes emotional distress. Emotional distress? From a car? Neighbors rolled their eyes, but were too scared of Karen's wrath to confront her directly. By noon, she had the HOA board gathered outside my house, pointing at my garage like she was briefing a SWAT team. One board member sheepishly approached me and said, Karen says your car violates 6 different rules." I asked him a simple question that shut him up. "Which 6? He glanced at Karen. She glared at him. He shrugged helplessly. But Karen wasn't done. Later that evening, as I walked my dog, she followed me. Yes, followed, ranting loudly about neighborhood integrity and flashy, dangerous vehicles. I finally turned around and said, "Karen, I served 3 tours overseas protecting freedoms you enjoy. I'm not afraid of conflict, but you're crossing boundaries." Instead of stopping, she smirked and hissed, "Then let's see how you handle a real battle." Those words chilled me more than any firefight I'd ever been in, because they weren't a threat, They were a promise for the next week. Strange little incidents kept happening to him. Why mailbox ripped off that a long key mark accidentally on the asphalt near my driveway. Had a letter stuffed under my door with no signature ***. Your sir doesn't belong here. Get rid of it. But I kept quiet. I wouldn't let a civilian bully me into fear. I'd faced worse in deserts 10,000 miles away. Then came the day everything changed at a Saturday afternoon. Clear blue sky. Kids riding bikes. I was polishing the Lambo, humming quietly. Suddenly, I heard screaming. Karen screaming that I didn't react at first. She screamed often, mostly about grass length and trash bins. But this scream was different. High, furious, unhinged. You think you can ignore the rules, she shrieked from the middle of the street. Before I could say a word, she stormed toward my driveway, wild-eyed, hair flying, hands clenched. You soldiers think you can do whatever you want just because you win a war. My blood froze. Her voice cracked as she jabbed a finger at the Lamborghini. This thing ruins everything. Every day I see it, it reminds me of people like you, loud, arrogant, dangerous. I stepped back, stunned. Karen, what are you talking about? She didn't answer. She simply raised her hand, holding a brick dot, and at that moment. That evening, she slipped violation notices under my door. One for noise, one for excessive brightness, one for public disturbance, even though the car was parked silently. Neighbors whispered that Karen always hated successful people. She once fined a family because their child's bicycle had two vibrant colors. Another family moved away after she called the cops because their dog barked once. I ignored her, but my silence only fueled her madness. Every time I revved the engine, even in my own garage, her curtains fluttered. She was spying. I didn't know she had already made up her mind. My Lambo had to go. The next morning, when I stepped outside for a run, the first thing I noticed was the eerie stillness. No kids on bikes. No dogs being walked. No lawn mowers humming. It was like the entire neighborhood had collectively chosen to avoid crossing Karen's invisible tripwire. Her influence was subtle, but terrifying. You could feel in the air the way some people quietly glanced at me, then quickly looked away, scared she might catch them being friendly. Why security camera pinged again. Another late night inspection. There she was, Karen Adams, crouched behind my trash bin at 1:47 a.m. with a flashlight, scribbling notes like she was documenting a crime scene. She zoomed her phone camera onto the Lambo's exhaust, then its rims, then the driveway lines. Every inch of my property under her obsessive little microscope. When I stepped outside to confront her, she froze like a raccoon caught in headlights. Karen, it's late. Go home. She glared at me, clutching her clipboard tighter. You think you're untouchable. But rules exist for a reason. I stepped closer, calm but firm. I've followed every rule in that binder of yours. She gave me a disturbing smile. Oh, you will break one eventually. People like you always do. I had stared down men with AK-47s who looked less dangerous than Karen did at that moment. WY noon. More letters appeared. First taped to my garage, then to my mailbox, then on my windshield. Remove the vehicle. Your presence disrupts order. The neighborhood will not tolerate you. No signature. No HOA stamp. Just Karen's cracked handwriting. Sharp, shaky, obsessive. That same day, a neighbor approached me. Mr. Larson, an older man who had lived there for 20 years. He looked around nervously before speaking, like he was smuggling state secrets. Listen, you didn't hear this from me, he whispered. But Karen, she's been talking about your car nonstop. At the last HOA meeting, she said she'd do whatever it takes to restore neighborhood peace. I frowned. What does that even mean? He sighed, shaking his head. With Karen? It means she's planning something. Around 3 p.m., she escalated again. This time, she brought reinforcements. .6 HOA members marched down the street behind her like ducklings. Clipboards out. Stern expressions. Uniformed in Karen's ideology. They stood in front of my house, staring at the Lamborghini as if it were a biological threat. Karen pointed at it dramatically. There. That is the problem. One of the board members stepped forward. Sir, Karen has submitted a motion to classify your vehicle as a community disruption device. I blinked. A what? He avoided eye contact. She believes it endangers the emotional stability of residents. Emotional stability? I pressed my fingers to my temple and exhaled slowly. Gentlemen, it's a car. A very expensive car, sure, but just a car. Karen stepped between us. No, it is a violation of aesthetic harmony. I turned to her. Look, I don't want trouble. She smiled in a way that told me trouble wasn't optional anymore. Oh, already have trouble. That night, something new happened. Something that made my instincts tighten like a fist in my chest. Why motion camera caught a shadow moving dangerously close to the Lambo. Not a person this time. A truck that a dark pickup slowly rolled to a stop at the edge of my driveway at 2:13 a.m. Its headlights off, engine running, driver unseen. IT stayed there, watching, waiting for almost 4 full minutes. Then it reversed silently and disappeared down the street. That Karen's house lights flicked on immediately after a silhouette stood in her window, watching my house, watching the garage. She wasn't just spying anymore. She was planning. The next morning, things grew worse. Much worse. That I stepped out and froze. White powder all over the hood of the Lambo, thick, chalky. Strange. At first, I thought it was vandalism. But when I leaned closer, I realized it wasn't thrown. It was tested. Someone had carefully sprinkled patterns, almost like mapping something, checking reaction, airflow, residue, not random, methodical, calculated. Karen walked by at that exact moment, holding her coffee mug and pretending not to notice. Strange, she said smugly. Maybe your flashy toy attracts the wrong kind of attention. I looked her dead in the eye. Is that what this is? Her lips curled. I'm just saying some things don't belong here. My jaw tightened. Not because of the car, but because I'd seen this pattern before. Not in California. I in war zones. People observing, testing, mapping, finding weaknesses. Karen wasn't just annoyed. She was preparing for something big, preparing to make her move. And it wasn't going to be a complaint. That IT was going to be an attack. The kind people don't come back from. One Friday night, after returning from a veterans hospital event, I parked my car in my driveway. I went inside to shower, exhausted from speaking about PTSD to young soldiers. But around 11 p.m., I heard a loud metallic crash. I rushed outside and froze. Karen stood there with a brick in her hand, her face red, breathing hard. My Lambo's windshield was shattered. Scratches ran across the hood like claw marks. She had keyed words into the paint, not HOA approved. For a moment, everything went silent. She smirked. Maybe now you'll get a normal car. She had no idea who she was provoking. Why hands curled into fists. Not out of rage, but out of instinct. A soldier's instinct. The kind that kicks in when a calm line is crossed, when a threat becomes real. The porch light flickered behind me. The chilly breeze carried the faint smell of gasoline and broken glass. The neighborhood, usually alive with dogs barking or TV sounds leaking through windows, was dead silent. Curtains shifted, eyes peeked. They saw everything, but they stayed hidden because Karen Adams didn't just run the HOA. She ran the fear in this neighborhood. That I took one slow step toward the wrecked Lamborghini. Every fracture on the windshield shimmered under the street lamp, forming spiderwebs of damage that stretched across the glass like veins. The brick lay at Karen's feet, still warm from impact. Small flakes of paint stuck to it. She didn't back away. Instead, she leaned in closer, invading my space, and whispered, "You don't belong here. People like you bring chaos. People like me." The words hit harder than the brick had hit the car. That I stared at her face. Her pupils tiny, her jaw twitching, her breathing erratic. This wasn't about a car. This wasn't about rules. This was about control, ego, envy, something twisted, something festering long before I moved here. That I crouched for a better look at the damage. The hood had deep gouges, like she didn't key it once, but multiple times with force. The words weren't scratched. They were carved. The message was clear. I will destroy what you loved. A cold, painful flashback hit me. The sound of metal exploding, the sandstorm of a blast wave, a Humvee flipped on its side. For a brief second, reality blurred. My breathing grew tight. My vision tunneled. My hands trembled. Not from fear, from restraint. Karen misread the silence as weakness. Oh? Cat got your tongue, she taunted. What happened to the tough soldier? Her smirk widened. Can't fight an HOA president? I slowly stood up. Karen, step away. Now, she laughed, a sharp, high-pitched, almost unstable sound. You can't tell me what to do. I run this street. Her voice echoed off the houses. A porch light flicked off in the distance. Another curtain snapped shut. It was like the whole street was bracing for a storm. I took a deep breath, controlling the adrenaline rising in me like a wave that in Afghanistan, I'd faced ambushes, snipers, roadside bombs. But this was different. This was personal. Karen pointed the brick at the shattered windshield. And guess what? I'll keep reporting you until that thing is gone for good. I'll have it towed. Scrapped. A bright red laser suddenly appeared across her chest. We both froze. That tea wasn't mine. That tea came from the porch of the house across the street. That a neighbor, an ex-Marine I'd spoken to twice. He held a laser scope. Unloaded, probably, but aimed perfectly to send a message. His voice cut through the tense silence. Karen, put the brick down. Back away before you make the stupidest decision of your life. Karen spun toward him, shaking with rage. How dare you? I'm the HOA president. He stepped forward, voice cold and calm. And I'm someone who respects this man's service. Keep pushing him, and you'll find out the hard way that you're not the most powerful person here. Karen's face twisted. Humiliation, fury, hatred. She stomped backward, breathing heavily, brick still in hand, eyes burning with venom. This isn't over, she hissed. You'll regret ever moving here. She stormed off toward her house, but before stepping inside, she turned one last time and screamed, that CAR is leaving this neighborhood. Even if I have TO, destroy it myself. Then the door slammed. The street went quiet again. Except this time, the silence felt different, heavier, sharp, like the moment before a battlefield detonates. And I looked at my shattered Lamborghini, my years of savings, my pride, my peace, and I knew Karen wasn't just unhinged, she was dangerous, and she had crossed a line she could never uncross. I didn't yell. I didn't touch her. I didn't threaten her. Years of battlefield discipline kicked in. Instead, I calmly called the police. When officers arrived, Karen tried to spin her usual lie. He threatened me. His car is illegal. I was defending the neighborhood. But I had two things she didn't expect: a home security system and a reputation. The officers recognized me. Sergeant Michael Rivers, retired Special Forces, decorated war veteran. One officer whispered, "Sir, it's an honor. We'll take care of this." Karen's face turned pale. For the first time, she realized she wasn't dealing with a pushover, but what happened next shifted everything. The moment the officer told her, "Ma'am, we have video evidence," Karen's expression cracked. Not in shame. Not in fear, that I enraged, at a deep, shaking, jaw-clenching rage. She looked at me the way an unstable animal looks at a trap it accidentally stepped into. Her voice came out low and trembling. "You think you can embarrass me? In front of MY officers? In MY neighborhood?" The officer corrected her. "Ma'am, they're not your officers. And this is not your neighborhood." She flinched, like the words physically slapped her. I stepped back, letting the officers do their job. They photographed the shattered windshield, the keyed hood, the brick, the vandalism, and the security camera angle. Everything was airtight. Karen watched silently, her breathing heavy, her hands twitching like she wanted to snatch the camera out of their hands. Then the officer read her rights. That's when she snapped. She screamed, "He's a soldier." They lie. They all lie. The whole neighborhood heard. Porch lights flicked on one by one. Curtains lifted. Phones peeked out to record. The officers calmly moved her aside, but Karen thrashed. "You don't understand. He's dangerous. He's triggering me. His car is triggering me." Her excuses were falling apart faster than her composure. One officer leaned close and said, "Ma'am, please stop resisting. This is vandalism and malicious property damage." She froze only when she realized her neighbors, the people she had lorded over for years, were watching her unravel. For the first time, her power was slipping right through her fingers. The officer walked toward me, voice respectful. "Sir, we can press charges. With this level of damage, it's felony vandalism." She could face jail time. But before I could answer, Karen shrieked so loud it echoed down the street. If he stays here, I swear I will make his life a nightmare. You'll see. I'll ruin you. I'll ruin everything you own. The street went dead silent. The officer immediately turned to her. That's enough. You're adding intimidation and harassment to your charges. But I didn't say a word, because deep down, something else was happening. Something I didn't expect. I watched Karen tremble, sweat, scream. I recognized the signs. Not of power, not of arrogance, but of obsession, an obsession that had spiraled into something unhinged, something unstable, something dangerous, not just for me, but for everyone living near her. The officers finally restrained her enough to guide her toward the patrol car. She kept glaring at me over her shoulder, her eyes wild, breathing sharp and uneven. You think this is over? She yelled. You humiliated me tonight. I'll destroy that car. I'll destroy you. The officers shut the car door. The street exhaled. Neighbors slowly stepped out onto porches, some shocked, some whispering, some relieved, maybe even grateful. But one thing bothered me. As the police car began to drive away, Karen wasn't fighting anymore. She wasn't screaming. She was smiling at a cold, eerie, victorious smile. The kind of smile that said, asterisk, 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 you didn't stop me. You just started something bigger. And at that moment, deep in my gut, my instincts tightened, because people like Karen, when their ego breaks, they don't calm down. They escalate. And I knew, with absolute certainty, Karen wasn't done. She was evolving into something far more dangerous. The next day, the HOA called an emergency meeting, not to apologize, but to protect Karen. They claimed she was emotionally distressed, that my car triggered anxiety, and that I should avoid exotic vehicles due to community harmony. They even suggested I pay for the damages to end the conflict. I sat there silently while the room buzzed with excuses. Finally, I placed a USB drive on the table, the footage of Karen smashing my Lamborghini. The room went dead quiet. Karen's jaw dropped. The HOA president's voice cracked as he said, "We had no idea." I replied, "You knew exactly what she was like. You just never expected her to attack someone who fought real battles." The silence that followed wasn't just awkward, that IT was fearful. Half the HOA members stared down at their shoes. The other half stared at Karen as if seeing her for the first time, truly seeing the monster behind the clipboard. That Karen's face went white, then red, then something unrecognizable. Her fingers dug into the armrest. Her foot tapped uncontrollably. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for someone, anyone, to rescue her. No one moved. For the first time, even her loyal supporters realized she wasn't a leader. She was a liability. The HOA president swallowed hard. "Karen, this is serious. You damaged property. Expensive property." Karen shot up from her chair. "He provoked me. He came here with that machine." I turned my head slowly toward her. "Karen, the car was parked. You attacked it with a brick." She pointed a shaking finger at me. "You don't belong in this neighborhood. You're violent. You're dangerous." The irony almost made me laugh. Another board member coughed awkwardly. "Karen, the video clearly shows you were the only violent person present." Karen spun toward him. "Whose side are you on?" He flinched, visibly, like he'd been waiting years for someone else to challenge her. The HOA vice president, an older woman with trembling hands, finally whispered, "This isn't the first complaint about Karen's temper." And just like that, the crack she had spent years covering up began to tear open. Voices rose, murmurs, whispers, then louder. She fined my daughter for chalk drawings. She threatened to report my husband for parking 1 inch over the line. She called the cops on us for having a barbecue. She slashed my inflatable pool last summer. Karen recoiled. Lies? All of you. But they weren't lies. They were confessions the neighborhood had been too scared to say aloud. Until now that I leaned back in my chair, silent, watching her kingdom collapse. Karen slammed her fist on the table hard enough to rattle the water bottles. "This is an ambush. You're all against me." The HOA president stood, his voice shaking. "Karen, We need to suspend you. Temporarily. Until we— And no, she screamed. You can't do this to me. I built this HOA. I built this community. I leaned forward, voice calm, steady, disciplined. You didn't build anything, Karen. You controlled it. Her breathing turned sharp, rapid. She wasn't losing power. She was watching it evaporate right in front of her. And then something changed. She looked at me. Not angry, not humiliated, but calculating at a shift so subtle only someone with battlefield instinct could sense it. Her voice dropped to a chilling whisper. You think this makes you safe? You think the neighborhood will love you now? The room tensed. She tilted her head slightly, eyes narrowing like a predator studying prey. You have no idea what's coming. The HOA board members stiffened that I didn't blink. She leaned closer across the table, a twisted smile forming. You soldiers always think you're prepared, but you've never dealt with me. Then she walked out, calm, steady, almost eerily composed. The door slammed behind her. The HOA president turned to me, sweat on his forehead. Sergeant Rivers, please understand she doesn't take losing well. I stared at the door Karen had exited through. Oh, I know, I said quietly. That's what worries me. Because the look she gave me before leaving, I'd seen it before. Not in suburbia, not in HOA meetings, but in war zones. Right before someone did something reckless, something irreversible, something destructive, Karen wasn't defeated. She was evolving into something far more dangerous. And the worst part? Everyone in that room felt it. The case went to court within weeks. The judge watched the video, looked at Karen, then looked at me. My attorney laid out the total cost of damages, $87,000, and the psychological impact of losing the only thing that kept me grounded after war. Karen tried crying, blaming medication, blaming noise, blaming everyone except herself. The judge wasn't buying it. He ordered her to pay full restitution, fined her for vandalism, and sentenced her to community service. When she screamed that she was being treated unfairly, the judge said, You attacked the property of a decorated veteran. Consider yourself lucky. Karen's face turned a shade darker than her usual red, veins standing out at her neck like cords. Her hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the table. The room silent except for her muffled sobs, or perhaps it was rage disguised as sobbing. She looked around, as if hoping someone, anyone, could save her from the reality she refused to face. The bailiff stepped closer. Ma'am, you need to leave the courtroom. Karen whipped her head toward me, her eyes wild. This isn't over. You think this proves anything? You think the law will protect you forever? The judge raised a hand. Order in the court. Karen's screams echoed for one final second before the bailiff escorted her out. Her fury was palpable, the kind of energy that could ignite a firestorm. As the courtroom doors slammed behind her, I felt the tension in the room shift. The spectators, neighbors, witnesses, and even some of the HOA board members had witnessed the unraveling of someone they once feared. I sat quietly, letting it all sink in. This wasn't victory. It wasn't closure. It was a pause, a temporary reprieve. Because people like Karen, obsessive, vindictive, unstable, they never truly disappear. They wait, they watch, and they plan. My attorney leaned over. She'll appeal, or try some loophole. Just be ready. This isn't over. I nodded. I know. The next few days were surreal. Karen had gone silent publicly, but the neighborhood felt her presence like a shadow. Curtains stayed drawn longer. Cars slowed when passing my driveway. I could feel her eyes, always somewhere, always watching, waiting for the moment to strike back. Every phone call, every knock, every unfamiliar car on the street made me tense. I was a veteran trained for unpredictability, yet this kind of battlefield, suburban obsession, was different. Personal, close, intrusive. Neighbors started approaching me, quietly, offering apologies for years of complicity. Some were scared to speak openly, others curious to hear firsthand what it was like to confront someone like her. I explained as calmly as I could that it wasn't about the car. It was about boundaries, about respect, about standing firm when someone crosses the line. And yet, deep down, I knew this was far from over. Karen had tasted the limits of authority, and she had been humiliated publicly for the first time in her life. People like her don't forgive easily. They don't just disappear. She was already planning her next move, and I had to be ready. But I wasn't done. Using the video evidence, I sued the HOA for negligence, for ignoring multiple complaints about Karen's harassment, for enabling her behavior, and for attempting to force me to pay for damages she caused. After a long and painful battle, the HOA settled. They paid me $150,000 and removed Karen as president permanently. Half the neighborhood celebrated that night. Fireworks, music, laughter. Turns out, everyone hated her dominance, but was too scared to stand up. My case gave them the courage they needed. The moment Karen's reign ended, the neighborhood breathed a collective sigh of relief. Streets that had felt tense and oppressive suddenly hummed with quiet freedom. Children played outside without fear of judgment. Neighbors waved to each other without checking over their shoulders, and lawn ornaments no longer had to be approved by someone who had nothing better to do than terrorize her neighbors. People came up to me one by one, shaking my hand, patting my back, whispering stories about years of silent frustration. I never thought anyone would stand up to her. One elderly man said, "You gave us permission to speak." Even the HOA board seemed different now, humbled, hesitant to assert power without reason. There were long, awkward meetings discussing how to prevent future abuses, how to enforce fairness, and how to rebuild trust in the neighborhood. I attended a few of them, but mostly I observed, letting others reclaim the courage they had been too frightened to summon before the home. I cleaned the lumbo carefully, polishing every scratch and swirl in the paint. Each stroke was a reminder, not of the attack, but of endurance. Every dent in the windshield, every keyed word, now symbolized resilience. It had survived Karen's rage, and so had I, but not all scars are visible. I still caught shadows in the corner of my vision when I stepped into my driveway. Curtains flickered more than usual. I kept my security cameras active, knowing that vigilance was not paranoia, it was preparation. People like Karen, even removed, leave a residue. A trace of obsession, of grudges unfinished. Late at night, when I walked past the now empty HOA office, I sometimes imagine her pacing inside, plotting, thinking, wondering how to claw her way back into control. A nagging instinct told me she wasn't done. Not truly. And so the neighborhood had freedom, but it was fragile. IT had been built not by bylaws, not by HOA meetings, not by threats, but by one decorated veteran standing his ground. That be why the morning after the settlement, fireworks had lit up the sky. Children cheered. Neighbors hugged. Laughter and music echoed through streets that had been muted by fear for far too long. It was a celebration of victory, yes, but also a demonstration. That courage, once shown, spreads. Yet, as I watched the last sparks die out in the dark sky, a small part of me remained alert. Some instincts, honed in battlefields far away, never sleep. Karen Adams had been removed, but she was still out there, watching, waiting. And anyone who's crossed her knows one thing. Obsession doesn't vanish overnight. IT only changes form at M, while Lamborghini was restored to better than new condition. A veteran-owned auto shop offered to fix it at a discount as a thank you for my service. As for Karen, she moved out within 2 months, unable to handle the humiliation. The neighborhood finally felt peaceful again. Sometimes people think war veterans are angry, dangerous, unstable. But the truth is the opposite. We are calm until pushed too far. Karen destroyed my car, thinking she could bully me. Instead, she discovered something she never expected. The quietest man in the neighborhood was the one she should have feared the most. Even with Karen gone, subtle reminders lingered. The driveway still held faint scratches along the hood, proof of her rage. I often caught myself walking past, running a hand along the polished surface, remembering how close things had come. Neighbors occasionally glanced my way, curious but respectful, some whispering about how one man had stood up to what they thought was untouchable authority. The HOA rebuilt itself cautiously, more transparent, less overbearing. Yet, every board meeting carried a quiet tension, a reminder that even in civility, vigilance was necessary. People had tasted empowerment, and some were emboldened. Others remained wary, remembering how Karen's obsession had turned a quiet suburban street into a psychological battlefield. I kept my security cameras active, not out of fear, but as a precaution, a learned habit from years of anticipating threats where they could appear. Even when the neighborhood felt calm, instincts honed on distant battlefields told me that obsession doesn't vanish, it mutates. And though Karen had fled, I couldn't ignore the subtle weight of her shadow lingering somewhere, watching, plotting. Friends and neighbors came by, offering congratulations, gratitude, and curiosity about the ordeal. They wanted to know what it felt like to face someone unhinged, what it was like to stay calm when provoked, what it meant to stand firm when everyone else flinched. And I told them the truth. That calmness isn't weakness. It's control. It's experience. And when pushed too far, it can become something far more formidable than anger alone. Tonight, I often stood in my driveway, listening to the quiet hum of suburbia, the streetlights casting long shadows across freshly mown lawns. It was peaceful, but the stillness carried an edge, a reminder that vigilance and patience sometimes go hand in hand. Karen had learned the hard way. I had learned too, but in a different sense. She had assumed I was just another resident, another neighbor to be intimidated, to be controlled. She had underestimated me. She had misread calm for compliance, patience for weakness. And in that miscalculation, she had revealed her greatest mistake, that the quietest, most disciplined man in the neighborhood could turn resilience into its own form of power. Even as life returned to normal, I knew one thing: peace isn't permanent. But preparedness, discipline, and resolve, that lasts. And anyone who thinks they can cross the line without consequence will eventually meet someone who refuses to be pushed. The streets looked calm. The houses gleamed under streetlights. The Lumbo shone brightly in the driveway, a testament to endurance. But in the back of my mind, I stayed alert. Because some people never forget humiliation. Some obsessions never die. And sometimes the quietest people, like me, wait patiently until it's their turn to remind the world why they should never be underestimated. The end.